To start our mask making session, first we need to lay out some newspaper. This is because the plaster mesh is extremely messy and will get everywhere. Then get out a pair of scissors, a bowl for water, plastic wrap, and your plaster mesh. Now there are several things that you can use for a base. You can either use newspaper wrapped in plastic wrap. This is to help it from keeping stuck to the plaster mesh. Or you can use a bowl or coffee container like so. Or you can even use your knee. Now for my design here, I'm going to be using the newspaper technique. Now there are several places in my design where I want the plaster mesh to be built up, so I'm going to be creating a base for that too. Then I realized that once I put the plastic wrap over it, everything would be flat. So I decided to rip that off and just build up the places I want to be built up with the plaster mesh. Next, we are going to cut up 6 pieces of the plaster mesh. Think a little bit how you want to place it, then stick your mesh in water, and then place it on your base. Then smooth over the plaster mesh with your finger to fill in any holes or crevices. With this next piece, I'm starting to bulk up the nose and the brows. And now I'm starting to bulk up where I want the cheekbones to be on my mask. I figured it was kind of a waste to have all this extra bit of plaster mesh stuck at the bottom, so I brought that up to the top as well. And here I'm adding water just to help activate the plaster in the mesh more, so I can continue to fill in those holes and crevices in my mask. Now I'm adding a little bit of extra plaster just to help further define my nose, brows, and cheekbones. After the plaster mesh is dry, I'm going to cut off these extra bits on the bottom of my mask. Since the bit that I cut off is kind of frayed, I'm going to fix that by placing an extra piece of plaster mesh over the place where I cut. Now, the ears that I made on this mask, I actually made them with the cardboard from an old Mountain Dew case. For the life of me, I don't know what happened to the footage that I recorded while making these ears. But the same concept of making a base and then building on top of that with plaster mesh applies. Now I'm going to show you some examples of how to do add-ons while working with plaster mesh. Now for this one, I'm thinking about making a bear, so I have a styrofoam cup that I'm going to use for the snout. So with the styrofoam cup near the bottom of my base, I'm just going to start placing the plaster mesh around it to hold it in place. Then from there, I can just start building my mask. Next, I'm going to start building the ears, because a bear without ears is just B. So taking a square of the plaster mesh, I dip it in water, scrunch it up, and then form it into a loop and stick it on my mask to form an ear. For the next mask I'm going to make, I will be using my knee as the base. Now for this technique, you'll want to wear old clothes that you don't care if they get dirty or ruined. So once again, I'm prepping my plaster mesh just by cutting it into 6 pieces, just so it's easier to maneuver with my knee up on a chair like this. And I'm thinking about giving this mask some protruding eyes, so I'm going to be using these little plastic cups as typically used for sauces.